Can I even read? No.
All right, here we go.
Okay. Next up, we got Hao Wang, aka MSJPQ, on the GitHubs. Author of popular plugins.
Oh, dang it! Sorry, I tried that. I thought you were gonna read this. So I thought it was the third word in.
Okay. Okay. So being an refugee, I was inspired by Justin's earlier talk. We can have nice things. If you haven't watched the talk, it's a great talk. A sort of a precursor to a lot of the ideas that Justin talked about earlier. And after watching that talk, Hao jumped ship and started hacking on NeoVim. You may know Kakwa
Oh,
and Vim.
yes.
Kakwa.
I'm very excited about the Kakwa.
Kakwa and Vim, as well as I think of some very cool other plugins that one for some reason now I can't think of, but because I keep on laughing about how you like to say Kakwa, and it makes me laugh. So, anyways, I was going to be talking about how we have built nice things in NeoVim. So let's head on over to there.
Oh yeah. That's
okay.
Hey, that's me, everybody.
Oh, hey everybody. Can you guys hear me? I'm supposed to get a message if you guys can hear me. Cool, I'm just gonna suppose that you guys can. No? Okay, cool, thank you. My name's Hao, and I'm here to talk about building extensions on top of NeoVim and its challenges, which is to say that
You're good to go.
I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? Anyways, I'm here to talk about how building NeoVim has this you're building for a platform that has really long history and a large ecosystem. And just before I started my talk, there was a typo on the speakers list. It's kind of funny. They're pretty alike. And I just recently started a new job at Greyflex. We're a really cool company. You should go Google us. This is, I think, GG, 2Gs, cool logo. And a bit about me. So for most of you who don't know who I am, I'm mostly well known for authoring two plugins. One's Chattree, other one's COQ. They're both sort of play on words for existing Vim plugins that's super popular. I also wrote a thing called SAP. It's sort of a TUI for analogous to the Linux utility SID. Anyways, the inspiration for my talk is mostly based on the reason why I switched over to NeoVim. I used to work with the Emacs until my friend Lexi showed me Justin's talk on sort of the technical basis and the philosophical direction of the NeoVim project, and really like drew me in because I really believe in the same messages that Justin sort of did. So the core of this is how with the code base of long history, you sort of have this issue of ossification, as in like the existing ecosystem sort of gets fixed in place and become really hard to update. There's two sort of aspects to this. One of them is the aspect of ecosystem. So other extensions within the same ecosystem, they get written, and they get written with this philosophy in mind that everything is supposed to be conservative, minimalist, and work with each other. So this philosophy sort of results in people writing extensions that do one thing and not much beyond that. And then other people writing different extensions that have to interlude with those extensions like during runtime. And that's really nice because you can sort of like pick and choose. It's like your own adventure. But that does have its own downsides, which is to say that interpolation during the runtime usually comes at a cost of unexposed implementations. And that really like quickly results in, once the software gets popular enough, all the internal APIs and design decisions gets baked into sort of the runtime forever, and you can't really update them. And that's what we're trying to avoid when we're building on top of that. And another aspect, which is more cultural than just the technical stuff, which is users, they get used to a certain way of doing things. They have a lot of reverence, especially in the Unix world, for the status quo. And what this sort of does is that even if there are ways to do things that's maybe 20% better, those things don't get done because the cost of like change is quite significant. And what NeoVim does sort of in terms of what it brings is by virtue of being a fork itself, it imparts this mentality to the community that, well, it's okay to change stuff. And if you like bring in enough features and bring in enough like updates, some of the changes are actually okay. And of course, what we really want is to have the best of both worlds, is to build new stuff and have the new stuff still work with everything that's old and also everything that's going to come in the future. And what we really want is to never ever expose our internal implementations. That way you can move without breaking stuff. One of the first things that you notice is when you have a large ecosystem that's been fixed in place for a long time, is that there arises this sort of unofficial API type of thing where, because everything has been fixed in place for so long and nobody can change, you can basically scrape the existing sort of ecosystem for data. Because a lot of the functionalities that gets applied at runtime, you can sort of just put a CI task like continuous integration on GitHub, and it's going to pull all of these sort of decorations into your own plugin. You can get like a lot of free stuff from third parties. That's how should I put it? You don't need to build your own brand new stuff. You can use prior arts, and those prior art they don't have to incur runtime costs. And then really another thing is like compiler, you can validate whatever you pull into. So even if they have an error, you can filter those out. So for example, the plugin, sort of like the completion manager that I wrote, ships with over 9,000 plugins, not plugins, sorry, snippets. And those snippets have 0 runtime errors because all the snippets that couldn't be parsed are just not shipped with us. It's it's like the stupidly simple thing. But here comes a challenge, which is to say that that's really nice. You can ship everything in a JSON file, but you still need to do that like ahead of time. So what about if you want to interface with somebody else who you didn't think of, or they want to interface with you, and you just never know they existed? Well, we could sort of take a look at the existing way of doing things, which is by letting other people import your code, right? There's this pattern here. It's a bifurcation. All of these are existing sort of NeoVim or Vim completion managers, and they either become their own platforms and like too big to rewrite, or they actually undergo rewrites when people want to change them, or they get abandoned. And that's what we're trying to avoid here, right? Like, plugins get abandoned and because they can't move without breaking things. And our goal is to be able to move fast and be able to not break things. The trick is actually really quite simple. It's just to use protocols instead of exposing implementations. And these protocols don't really have to be designed. They don't have to be like LSP. Some protocols are just emergent. For example, the OmniFunk. It's just something that like it's an API. I don't think it was designed as a protocol, but it just, because everybody needs to use the same API, they end up writing functions in a way that's compatible, and you can just scrape them at runtime, and you're gonna get like very good results because people just write to the single specification. And so it's actually possible to basically define a location where you tell third parties to register callbacks. That's very much in the Vim tradition, in which you put things in a global scope, not in like not inside a closure or something. You just put it there, and then the callbacks basically talk to your own plugins from via like the LSP protocol, and then they can never actually import your code. And this is probably the minimum amount of coupling that's possible. It's all about like decreasing amount of dependency that people have for you. And the trick is going back to like my inspiration from Justin, which is, what is a platform? NeoVim is actually the platform, not your app. And you can also sort of view the ecosystem as a platform too. But NeoVim is very specifically designed, as in the words of Justin, the browser for the command line, it's supposed to be like be designed to host all of these new sort of extensions without the extensions having to invent their own sort of way of doing things. Another good example is if you ever use a lot of Unix tools, they actually share the same environmental variables for configuration. So this is the on the left side, it's actually my plugin chat tree, and on the right, it's just the Unix tree command. If you notice, they actually have the same coloring. They just share the same like protocol for decoration. And I guess lastly, we could talk about because we talk about sort of users being able to accept um, deviance from tradition. We could talk about when it's a good idea to break some traditions. And this also goes back to like the Vim design philosophy, which is very Unixy, because in the Unix world, this idea that worse is better, which really just means that if you want to implement a system, um, it's better to implement it in a way that minimizes complexity to yourself and push those additional complexity onto the next layer of software of people who depend on you. And this really works quite well, except at some layers, you need to stop passing the buck because humans, unlike computers, we're super slow. We can't type reliably, and we read really fast. Oh, sorry, we read really slow comparative to computers. So an example that I've noticed is that in Vim, there's this sort of requirement to have exact prefix if we want to do completions suggestions. And that's really quite sort of like that's got quite a lot of support in Vim. But the issue is that as we make typos, how do you reconcile that? And I guess the answer is that you need to sort of do a thing where you basically say, okay, we're gonna do a more sort of like um, we're going to introduce more robustness into people like not being able to type perfectly every single time. And I don't have enough time to go over the algorithms that I put into my completion manager, but it's basically a very data-driven approach, in which case you not only have robustness against typos, but you also have this nice ranking thing. It's borrows a bunch of stuff from how you do data processing in machine learning, but it's kind of cool if you have the time to look at it or if you have the interest. And lastly, just because I have the time, I want to show off some of my plugins. This is not like the core plugin, the core functionality of the plugin. They're more or less just sort of like the things that's peripheral to a functionality of the plugin. So like if the peripheral is this nice, you can imagine how good the core is because I don't have time to show the core stuff. The first one is there's type checker on all of the configurations. So if you like add additional key to it, it's going to tell you, hey, there's an extra key. And if you make a type mistake, so for example, you put a string instead of a number, it's going to let you know too. And for the completion manager, actually ships its own sort of snippets, and you can evaluate your it ships those custom snippets. You can actually evaluate your own custom snippets, like inside your buffer. And the top image is when like the results after you have a successful evaluation. It's going to tell you like this is what your snippet looks like, and here's where the placeholders are and everything. And the bottom is basically when you have made a mistake, it's going to tell you like where you made the mistake and like what character it's expecting. Over here, you're missing like a colon. And of course, because one of the goals is to have like really fast performance, you can see really detailed statistical sort of analyses on what's the maximum amount of time, what's the minimum, what's the average, what's the sort of like the median. And the lastly, for the set, it was written out of frustration on mass replace, search and replace. You can sort of just choose your own search and replace snippets. You can see a preview and you can apply those preview. Anyways, just tying everything together, when you're trying to make really nice software, you'll not only need to take into account like technical factors, but the human factors is also like something that you need to keep in mind, and you need to put that up front, like culturally. How do you get buy-in? How do you create sort of incentives for people to switch over if you do make breaking changes? And that's how you get nicer things. I think I have like 1 or 2 minutes to do your Q&A. I'm not sure though. Didn't time myself properly, but just read the chat. Oh, I got an ad for DoorDash. I don't know if where I'm supposed to read in the chat. Where did I read the chat? Cool.
Hey,
Hey, in Twitch. I can't see
hey,
any
how can
Twitch
you hear me?
chat. Yeah, I can.
Oh, because I'm on. Oh yeah.
Hey,
Cool. Great
Hey,
talk.
I don't know where the Q&A is, but like I think I'm still live, right?
Yeah, you're
It's
still
in
live.
Twitch.
You're good.
I don't see any
I
Twitch
can
chat.
I can send any questions over if anyone types any in the chat right now. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask?
you do
Yeah,
have a lot
sorry.
of clappy emojis.
Yeah, the chat is full of people clapping. I love to talk. I really liked thinking about this mix of cultural and different performance characteristics to solve. So the questions would actually be in the Twitch stream, but that's okay. We're looking at it right now. They're spamming clap. They like it. I see an awesome talk. I see some all caps claps. Great talk. But it looks like we don't have any questions right now.
Okay,
Everyone should
cool.
try out
Cool.
Chadtree and Kakwa.
Kakwa!
Kakwa. Um,
Mhm.
they're very cool, and it looks really really interesting. So with that, I think we're gonna head back to the main stage. Everyone,
Woo! Woo! Hey, hi. Hey, guess what? Hey, guess what?
what?
Were you doing something? Why didn't you respond? That was really slow response.
Well, one.
This is the worst list I've heard in a long time.